And we are live. Hey guys, welcome to another East Coast Rams podcast. In this case, live stream. We are trying this for the first time, so please do excuse our technical difficulties as we kind of work out and grow with this. Guys, welcome to this eve of NFL football. We are only 1 week away. How you doing, Zach? How you feeling? A week out.
Hey, I'm doing good. This is fun. We're going to see how this goes. Hopefully, get some live comments from people down the road. But this is kind of our just initial test run of live streaming to see if this is something that everyone wants to hear. But I'm looking forward
Yeah,
to football.
uh, definitely. There's so much talk about too. We kind of recorded, I think, on a Monday, the Monday right before Jones got traded, and we'll talk about that a little bit here more in a second. But yeah, just excited for football to be coming around, band. Hopefully, we can kind of like grow into this live streaming thing and get better at it. So. Please like and subscribe if you guys haven't. If you're listening to this afterwards, go to our YouTube page. You can see us physically if that's what you want to do. Also, we put out other different contents. We're starting to put out shorts and stuff. So you can get other content if you want to see more of us right there.
Yeah, please definitely do. Follow us on all the social medias, X, Instagram, Threads, wherever you find your Rams content. Please find us there.
Yes. What topic do you want to talk about first, Zach, here as we get into this?
So I guess we can talk a little bit about Ernest Jones a little bit. We kind of left off on our last episode.
Yeah.
With the possibility of him leaving. And I know we both kind of made comments that we were pretty sure he was leaving. We just didn't know how soon. I think I guessed pretty accurately that we were within a week, really, of knowing his stance here. And it was literally the next day that we found out that he was going to be traded off to the Titans. So, again, coming from the information that was coming across the few days prior, not really a big surprise. I think even McVay's press conference the day before really, really showed that they were going to move on, and apparently he knew that he was going to be traded for a few days since right after the Texans game or right before the Texans game.
After Texans game, when he got off
Yeah.
the plane, he was kind of told like you're not practicing anymore, which is a little shocking. Okay, so the fan base had a lot of uproar about this. Of course, most people know I'm a big Ernest Jones defender, and let's be clear, he's not a top 5 linebacker. He is a really good linebacker, though. So I wish he would have got re-signed. I didn't think he was because Rams haven't ever valued linebacker. But two things, I know this is hard for some people to understand. Two things that can be true at the same time. That he was going to get traded away, that he was a good player, but that doesn't necessarily mean he needs to get re-signed. The value they got for him was atrocious, and they could have done better for getting more value. And then you can argue that value point. You can argue how good of a player he is. But he got traded, and I feel like, at least in my personal opinion, they got a bad deal. And Snead has a history of making trades for players when they're super high and overpaying, and also trading away players at their low point for super low, even less than, I made a joke, and I was half serious. I really thought we would get something around that, but he got less back for what I thought we were going to get for him than I said. Because what I say, Zach, a 5th and a 7th pick swap, we didn't even get that.
No, yeah, it was definitely less than what we all thought. And again, it's just one of those things where we talked about it. Like, you lost your defensive captain from the previous year, your green dot, your most experienced Rams defender. And yes, the Rams have some really good talent still on that defense, but it's now a lot younger. So now, as we have captains came out this week, Kobe Turner and Quentin Lake, both are going to be the defensive captains. I really think those are two good players to be captains for that team. But again, when you're moving on from someone like Ernest Jones, it does just, kind of kicks, fans down a little bit, or the expectation goes down a little bit on how this defense can function when you take out a core piece. When you already lost the biggest core piece within Aaron Donald, now you have lost another core piece with Ernest Jones. So again, in Sean McVay we trust, in Les Snead we trust. It's not about that, but it's always that initial reaction, like, why are we doing this? And we don't know the real reason why. Could be because of Ernest Jones' health. It could be because of the pay. But everyone, I mean, even Ernest Jones said he was thinking he was going to play this season. He knew that he probably wasn't going to stay with the Rams after this season, but he thought he was going to play this season out.
Yeah. Maybe Gurley with his knee burned the organization so bad they just didn't want to go through that again, and they ate a lot of dead money with Gurley's contract. But let's be clear for a second. Now, I totally understand some people who want to try to say like Jones is a mid linebacker in the NFL, like 15, 16. Fair if you think that. I disagree, but it is what it is. The people saying he's trash, that is a completely bad take in my opinion. They're like posting videos as if any NFL player doesn't have bad plays. Like Cooper Kupp fumbled in a playoff game. Cooper Kupp has dropped passes. That doesn't mean he's bad. Same thing with Jones. It was like someone posting where he was clearly in a zone and the wide receiver just went around and it looked like a safety basically didn't rotate over because of how we do a shell coverage with man match underneath. But again, people don't think about that. They just see Jones in the middle of the field running towards a wide receiver, and it's just a little unfair. And I feel like some fans need to kind of get a reality check. Just because a player gets traded doesn't mean they're bad, right?
Sure.
And now
100%
health could be issue. Health could be issue, and apparently his play, it feels like from Sean McVay's comments, his play was starting to drop off in camp. Now, how much health reflects that and causes issues, how much Omar Speaks or Spites or however you pronounce it was outplaying him, we won't really know, and we won't truly know probably for like a year or so. Like, you typically don't hear that stuff until a little bit after. But it's a shocking decision, but they made it, and hopefully this defense can grow. And I feel like it's going to be similar last year. It's going to be rough early on, but a lot of young players, a lot of undrafted players we'll talk about here in a second, hopefully they can grow, and we can watch them grow throughout the season.
For sure. I 100% agree. All right, so we're going to wrap up with that. But for anybody who is listening, who is watching the live stream, please feel free to drop your comments in. We'll take them as they come through. So don't feel, anytime you want to just chat with us, go ahead and throw those in, and we'll get to those as we see them. But let's kind of talk into the new 53, because after our last podcast, the 53-man roster came out, and there was some surprises within that 53 roster. Let's take it to probably one of the more interesting decisions that were made, and that is the running back room. So within that running back room, the Rams did decide to only keep 3 running backs. So you have Kyren Williams, you have Blake Corum,
Rivers,
and Ronnie Rivers. So you have those. So we took Zach Evans, who did pretty well in the preseason, and he did not make the initial 53-man roster cut. But the more interesting news that we found out was that Kyren Williams will be the punt returner. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about taking someone as the caliber of Kyren Williams, who was 3rd running back in the league last year, even with his absence? How do you feel about him now being the person to take those punt return spots?
Yeah, one little caveat there. Just we were able to re-sign Zach Evans to the practice squad. Asterisk there. So they're trying to stash him, and they thought they could save that roster spot without Evans getting signed from last year. But yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the fantasy implications of this in a few like moments. If you're talking about the wholesale, like as a team, I disagree with that. I'm one of those people. Even if he's a good punt returner, this drove me nuts when they did Cup. Even if Cup was a good punt returner, kick returner, the injury risk, it's like playing in the preseason. It doesn't make sense to me because the risk return. I know there's a new format, but the risk return is just not high enough for me to risk a starter getting hurt, especially running back who in theory is supposed to be high volume this year. At least that's what a lot of people think. I think it'll be more 50-50, but even then, like you see through the preseason, all these teams playing their starters, starting people getting hurt and getting out for like half of the season, missing 4 or 5 weeks. Is it really worth those practice reps against second stringers? In my opinion, it isn't. So I mean, he's going to be, I think he'll be better than Cup, to be honest, Zach. He'll definitely be better than Cup, but it's not worth it, at
Yeah, I
least in
mean
my
the
eyes.
the question is, it does remind me similarly of Cup, and a lot of times Cup was just there for the fair catch. He was there to fair catch it. They weren't gonna risk it, and you wanted someone who had the best hands in the punt return, and maybe that's what they're looking at. Maybe they didn't trust in a lot of the other players. Maybe they didn't have faith in Tutu Atwell to do those types of catches, which again comes to the reason of then what is Tutu Atwell going to be doing? But when it comes to Kyron Williams, it's like you have the third best rusher in the league last year doing punt returns. That's like saying let's ask Derrick Henry to do punt returns. Like it's just something that I don't think is that he would even accept doing. But Kyron Williams is a
Mhm.
team player. He does have the speed. He does have some speed. He does have some agility to get around. He can kind of bull rush people, I think, and get the extra yardage if they do want to utilize him like that. But really, I think we're going to see a lot more fair catches than anything else with him. They just want someone to be able
Do
to secure the ball and catch the ball without dropping it, fumbling it, things like that.
do you think they'll put him back there for kick returns?
I don't think so. I think that will probably still be Tutu Atwell's spot, but we'll see. We'll have to see after the
Because
first
they
game what actually happens.
So, like, all the writing I've kind of read about the kick return kind of says like the blocking is going to be more like run blocking. So the theory is you put you running back behind that line versus a wide receiver, and it'll probably be more beneficial because they can actually read the gaps and like know the different lanes they can run through.
Yeah, but it all comes down to what teams are actually going to do when it comes to the first few games. I mean, I don't know how many of them
Mhm.
are actually going to do the true what the NFL wants them to do. They still may kick it, into the end zone and just let it be whatever it is, the 30. Um, so we'll have to see how the first game goes. And I think that's what McVay's saying. Like Kyron Williams will be the punt returner for kickoff or for the punts. But for kickoffs, I think they're still debating on just depending on what style
Mhm.
each team is going to utilize.
Yeah, and you kind of saw with the Texans, it's preseason, but they kind of seemed like they had agreement to keep on kicking in the end zone, which was a little funny. Uh, yeah, so interesting stuff there. You want to talk about No Boom in McClendon? It looks like they are gonna start week 1, so we're not gonna see any Havenstein starting, and of course, we have a suspension for is that 3 weeks?
Is it that long? I didn't know. I didn't know it was
It
that
might be.
long.
It might be too.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely an interesting choice. Sean McVay. I think the good thing about the Rams this year, and I think they learned from their 22 um,
Mhm.
kind of disaster is that they really needed to focus on O line depth. If one man goes down, they need to be able to shift some things around. And so the Rams really kind of, again, I think they've done a lot of shocking the world within a 1 week period, where they're going to now, where we thought Steve Avila was going to be the center, they're going to move him off and they're going to put Jonah Jackson, who apparently has been doing center spots while they've been, but the media just wasn't allowed to to say that that's what they were doing. Um, so it seems like he has experience in it. It is something that he has known to do. So I don't know what happened, whether it's because of these O line
Mhm.
injuries, or if Steve Avila just like we just couldn't get into the right rhythm that was needed to trust him to be the starting center. I don't know. This is again because we don't know what was happening in all those practices when Jonah Jackson was in there. It's hard to say, but maybe it is because of this O line shift that we see.
Mhm. Oh, thanks, Tuna. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, we're gonna
Zach
have to
did.
get you on sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Zach worked very hard on this. So appreciate a lot of Zach's hard work, and we try to put in a good amount of time for your guys' viewing pleasure. Uh, yeah, Zach, I think I really like the way McClendon would come in and spell out different points of last season. I feel like his pass blocking needs a little bit of work. I think he's a great run blocker. He's kind of underrated, but he's always needed to grow in the pass blocking game. And you definitely notice that against those top tier edge defenders. So I'm hoping to see a little bit of growth from him in that right tackle spot. But Nobu, man, he worries me. He worries me a lot on that left side. And I feel like after we paid him, his growth has just kind of stagnated, and he just hasn't grown. Like, do you share those kind of reservations?
I don't know if I do. I think if if we said Noteboom was going to be our um, if he's going to start every single game for the whole year, I would probably be a little bit more concerned. Not super concerned when it comes to him playing a couple games. I think he's a really good depth piece, and he's able to shift at some of those other positions. Um, Warren McClendon, I still need to see a little bit more on, but I think again with the team that we currently have, I think I still believe in Joe
Mhm.
Noteboom, Steve Avila, Jonah Jackson, Kevin Dotson, and McClendon, if indeed um, Havenstein is out. But um, I think I trust this offensive line as it is because I do think that it's a good depth piece that we did not have in years past.
Do you think they changed the game plan at all because of these new this rotating chairs of offensive linemen? Do you think they go more heavily run? Were they planning on just going heavily run anyways? Like, I feel like we talked about all off season. They're doing everything they can to signal, hey, we want to run the ball a majority of offensive snaps. Does this change that? Does this make it more likely? Or, like, what's your point of view there?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it changes because this is what the Rams have been building for. So whether that's a depth piece or their starting pieces, that's why they brought in, Jonah Jackson. They brought in some of these other pieces to make sure that they can have that run offense that they really want. If they need to make change, obviously there's confidence that you still have Puka Nakua, you still have Cooper Cup. You got all these weapons that you have to play with, and you don't have to rely just on the run. But I do think that we are still going to be run heavy.
Mhm.
And I think you're going to need to be run heavy, especially going up against Detroit, where that atmosphere is so loud that trying to do fancy things in the air is going to be challenging for this Rams
Mhm.
offense.
Yeah. Well, let's transition to defense. The Rams released their 53, and we're going to just focus on not the people we knew were going to kind of get signed. We'll talk about the undrafted free agents, the kind of surprises of the roster. Omar Speets, Elias Neal, Jalen McCullough, Josh Rawlis, and Charles Woods. I'll just start this off saying I really loved what I was seeing from Omar Speets, of course, and Josh Wallace. I really was impressed with his coverage. Now, we didn't really get to see a lot of him. They pulled him, I believe, did he only play the first preseason game? I believe so. He might have played a little bit of the second. I can't remember. But snaps I did see, they're impressive. Now, got to see that at NFL speed. Apparently, he's been doing really good at camp. So just two fantastic players, diamonds in the rough. And the Rams have, like we talked about before, been historically in under Snead really good at picking up those undrafted free agents and make them like finding these diamonds and kind of like promoting them up and giving them eventually a good payday. What's your take on this crop?
I think it's really good. Did you mention? I might have missed it, but did you mention that the Rams also picked up Neville Gallimore? Did you say that?
No.
Okay,
And he's
so
from
he was
the
also added.
Patriots?
He is from the Patriots.
Yeah.
He was. I think he was in this offseason with Miami, and they cut him. So the Rams picked him up. So he is now also on the 53-man roster. And I think the Rams knew that this is a young defense, and they still needed some veterans to come in. And so they're bringing in Gallimore, who's had 4 seasons with the Patriots. Again, just as much as we want to rely on this new crop of rookies, there's still a little bit of concern on how much they can handle, going through an 18 season game season. So I'm very confident in this defense. I thought the defense played really well, with the pieces that we didn't even have our starters in over the preseason. And I think the defense played really well, even going up against second tier offenses. But I'm pretty excited as far as the defensive line goes. Obviously, what kind of worries me goes back into the linebacker position now that we don't have Ernest Jones. That's where I think things start to fail a little bit. Not because I don't know. It's just like with Jones gone, now we're left with Troy Reader and Christian Roseboom, who again are fine, but I think they're more rotational pieces. I don't know if they're going to be one of those pieces that stay out there 24/7.
You're being very generous to Reader there.
I
like
love my
Roseboom.
Rams so much that I will give everyone a chance. It's when you start not being reliable, that's when I'm going to. But the Rams have a plan. They have to have a plan, and
sometimes they
I will
don't.
trust that.
Sometimes
Well, I gotta trust them.
Snead just hopes he hit. He is. I feel like a bad. He'll like do some roster moves, and I feel like sometimes they pay off like wildly, and then other times they don't. And it's just a lot of highs and lows with Snead. It's just not like a consistent. I feel like the Steelers GM is like a consistent through line. I feel like the 49ers GM consistent through line, and then like watching being with Snead is like up and down. Like he'll do a great contract, and then the very next contract will be atrocious. Like, and then same thing with signing players and stuff like that.
I don't disagree with you, but I'm going to trust until we see what happens week 1.
Yeah. You want to talk fantasy here as our last topic? A little fantasy.
Yeah, let's talk about it. My true fantasy. I know we have an ECR podcast fantasy. I did that all automatic. We'll see how that goes. Tomorrow is my actual official, what I've done for so many years, fantasy. So I'm looking for advice. So if you guys are watching live, tell me who I should pick first. Maybe I'll take that into consideration when I look at it. But yeah, tell me a little bit about your. I know you've done a couple fantasies, I think, already. So how are your teams looking around?
I actually really like my dynasty. This first year I'm doing dynasty, so I'm picking up a lot of younger guys. I have a super young team. I don't think I'll be ultra competitive this year, but I'm looking forward to it. I got Puka in all my leagues so far. I got Laporta in all my leagues. Those have been first because I've had late picks in almost every draft because I'm not lucky. Do you know your pick yet? You got for that draft?
I don't know what my pick is yet. I probably could look. Maybe it's up there now, but
yeah, but we're gonna kind of focus on the Rams relevant players, and maybe we'll do general like fantasy kind of talk if you guys like that type of thing and that's what you guys want. But let's kind of go through Rams wide receiver situation with fantasy. Who do you think is going to pop off this year fantasy wise? Who do you think won't? And who would you not kind of pick up?
That is a great question as far as wide receivers go. You know, it's interesting because if anyone listened to the Pivot podcast, Cooper Cup was kind of on there this past week, and it was a fascinating podcast. And one of my
Mhm.
favorite things was about when Odell Beckham came in during the Super Bowl time, and they said the plan for the Super Bowl was for Odell to go off because everyone's going to be focused on Cooper Cup. So I'm thinking this is going to be a reversal year, and everyone's going to focus on Puka because he's the young, new, fresh to leave Cooper Cup open.
I don't think defensive coordinators is going to do that. I think it's going to be reversed.
Do you think they're still going to focus more on Cooper Cup and not
Yeah,
as much on Puka Nakua? Okay.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It depends how they mix. Now, last year, let's be mindful. Red zone throwing, they were atrocious. I think they were actually like bottom of the league in the red zone when it comes to throwing the football and getting touchdowns. I don't think they're going to have that same issue. I think overall the line pass blocking is going to be a lot more improved. I think focusing on the run game, especially leading up to the end zone, is going to help out a lot, kind of smooth out the play calling because McVay's play calling in the red zone, it was good. We scored a lot of touchdowns, but those passing calls weren't the best. And I feel like some of that had to do with wide receiver depth. A Cup wasn't fully healthy. He's mostly a red zone guy. So I definitely think those red zone touchdowns for Cooper Cup are going to still be there. I just think Nakua is going to get more yardage overall throughout the season. At least
Sure.
that's my take on it. How are you feeling about Robinson? I know a lot of drafts right now. I think Robinson, I'll look it up while you're talking, but how are you feeling about DeMarcus?
So Demarcus Robinson's interesting because I do think he has some initial value to him. But I think they're going to mix it up a little bit when it comes to wide receiver three. I think we're going to see Whittington come into the play a little bit, and it's going to be Robinson's um, job to lose for the most part. If we don't see the kind of stats that we kind of saw with him towards the end of last season, then I think we could see a little bit more of a shift on who's actually going to be wide receiver three. So I would say he should be, if you don't have a Rams wide receiver, you may want to have him like on your bench if you need some depth pieces. But I don't think I would put him in as an active roster as of yet. He may be
Hmm.
something might be wanting to pick up, in a waiver wire down the road.
Yeah, so he has a 244 right now. What about Whittington? Like, so I had this kind of conundrum on my dynasty team because I'm relatively weak at wide receiver, and I'll kind of go through that here right now. So I do have Puka. So I have Puka, Xavier Worthy, McConkey, and then Osborne and Tolbert and Dotson and Jameson Williams. So I have a lot of question marks on my kind of wide receiver
Yeah.
team right there. And I was like, oh, should I go Whittington, which is going to be less likely to pay off this year, or should I go Robinson, which is more likely to kind of boom? But the problem with Robinson is I feel like he's going to have a 14, 15-point game here and there, but he's going to have a lot of sevens. He's going to be consistent, but I feel like Whittington is going to have a brighter future. I honestly do believe Whittington will be starting Rams wide receiver in like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think there's a short term, long term. Robinson's short term. I think he's going to be the one
Yeah.
initially out of the gate. But once you get to the bye week, I don't know if things change. So that's where it comes down to it. So it's like if you have some question marks, you don't have Puka Nakua or Cooper Cup in your market, but you think that there could be another explosive wide receiver in the Rams, then I'd probably look at Whittington um, as kind of a long term investment, just so that you have
Mhm.
them. That's my opinion, especially if you don't plan on using some of those other wide receivers in that depth chart that you have. Worst case, you might have to try to throw him out at the waiver wire if he's not actually producing before the end of the season.
Yeah, and not to mention, like, I feel like he's going to be one of those waiver wire guys that is going to be constantly getting signed and cut. He just feels Gabe Davis was very much like that because he'll have a 20-point game and then he'll have zero. And actually, he kind of abused me last year with doing that to my team. Every time I would start him, he would get me zero, and then like he would go 20 the week I bench him. I'm like, I just can't play with Gabe Davis. I just not
Yeah, the
not
inconsistency with some of the players is just kind of crazy. But sometimes it's not to their. I mean, it's health of the team, things like that,
Mhm.
schemes based on the teams that they're facing up against. So always have to think about that. Running backs. Let's talk about that real quick.
Oh yes.
Um, Kyron Williams, he was planned to be a first rounder in fantasy football, and a lot of teams who did fantasy leagues prior to this week probably grabbed him as one of the top 5, top 10 picks. What is your take now that he's going to be a punt returner? I mean, obviously he's still going to
Uh
play some running games, but like, how do we feel about him when you have Blake Corum on the team as well?
I think I've always said I thought it was going to be a 50-50 backfield. Eventually, like in the first 3 or 4 weeks, I feel like they're going to let Corum grow a little bit, unless if he's just like hitting home runs instantly, which I don't expect, but you never know. But yeah, Kyron's gonna have some usage issues, and I feel like durability is already a problem with him. And you add more touches, that means he's gonna get less touches running ball. And I feel like they want a more balanced committee backfield approach because when we did not have him on the field at all during those 3 or 4 weeks, we were bottom 10 offense. It was night and day. And I feel like McVay has to know how to manage that. And if you're drafting, in my opinion, in the first round, you want to be those dependable 15-point players at minimum. Or like sometimes in the first round, if you're late, you can go for the like 10 to 25-point type player. But you want a McCaffrey, you especially in a redraft league, you want someone who's consistently dependable. And I
I
feel
think he's
like
gonna.
Kyron,
I think it's gonna be
Kyron is
dependable in the red zone.
you gotta hope it. So it was the thing about that with Kyron is it was an abnormally high year for the Rams scoring rushing touchdowns. I don't think that's going to happen. Every year under McVay, we have scored more touchdowns through the air than the ground until last year. So I feel like that's not gonna be something that continues. Uh, of course, like sometimes they would count screens and stuff. But I just feel like Zach, he's not a first rounder. Like I feel like in the second round, if he fell there, then he would be a great pickup. Especially because like it, if he does happen to get the same volume, he's going to be really good for you. I have concerns about his volume
So does
personally.
that mean you would pick up Blake Corum some point in the league or in the draft?
I picked up Blake Corum in every league I have,
Good. I
but
think that's a good call to
I'm
make.
you know I'm a big Blake Corum stan. Like I love Blake Corum. I feel like he's going to get more and more of the red zone touches. I think a lot of those goal line situations, Kyron's not going to get those touchdowns anymore. I think they're going to put Corum in. And so you might have Kyron basically go in for a drive, go all the way, and it's kind of like an Eagles situation where your running back gets all the way to the red zone, and then they sub out a package and put in Corum or put in a goal line back. In Eagles' case, it was Hurts doing a lot of design QB runs.
Yep.
So I feel like that will definitely hurt Kyron's production. I would go for McCaffrey. I would go for. I'm really big on like Josh Jacobs, not in the first round, but like I feel like you want a back in a backfield that's going to be less, a little bit less competitive and a little bit more reliant on scoring in the red zone with the running game. That at least that's my take on it.
So should I pick up Matthew Stafford in my league?
Depends who your quarterbacks are. I'm in a weird situation with my dynasty because in my redraft league I have Stroud and Tua, so I'm pretty happy with that redraft league. In my dynasty, I have Stafford, Goff, and a rookie in Washington, Jaden. Not is it Jaden Daniels? I think it's Jaden Daniels. But so I'm not expecting Daniels to be good until a few weeks in when he starts getting a hang of the NFL. Goff has been a sneaky top 10 quarterback, but at that 9 and 10 spot for fantasy. And he's one of those dependable guys. He's going to get you consistent 16, 15 points. But Stafford
he's never going to get you that. He's never going to get you that 25 to 30 points.
No, he's just never going to get you 30 points. Yeah. So
outside of the 2018 year, which I think that was the year that I had Goff, and I also won. I won our fantasy Super Bowl. So
yeah, but they were also one of the best offenses in the last 2 decades. So a throwing quarterback has to have a lot of things go right for them being number one in fantasy. I'm not expecting that. My QB is very weak in my dynasty. I'm still going to probably be looking to draft a QB next year. But Goff is dependable. He'll get you 16 points. Most of the time, he's not going to lose you a game. Do not play him when he's away. Definitely play him when he's at home because there is a big drop-off. I think he averages like 18 points when he is at home, and when he's away, he goes anywhere from like 11 to 15. So there's a drop off there. But Stafford, I feel like it's going to be more 12 to 23 points, and it's going to just depend week to week. Last year, like I said, we had a fall off with rushing touchdowns more than passing touchdowns. That definitely hurt his fantasy number. So that's going to be a lot better. I anticipate it be a lot better this year, even though we're running more. I think we're going to score more passing touchdowns. What do you make of that, Zach? Do you think Stafford is a worthwhile pickup?
I always had, I always have 2 quarterbacks, and I usually always pick up Stafford as, 1 or 2 and just have him. And if I don't like what my one quarterback, then I'll throw him in or vice versa. So Stafford is one of those, again, more consistent type players who will get you a good average of points. So I definitely would probably pick him up if I could.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with just some of these unknowns. Like, I don't know how Aaron Rodgers is going to be coming back. Patrick Mahomes is one of those, like, even though he is probably one of the best quarterbacks out there, there is some inconsistency there too. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this all plays out and who I can get. But I love my Rams, and so I usually have at least 2, maybe 3 players from the Rams team on my team every year.
Yeah, normally Josh Allen is almost always the QB I draft, just because he's a good, dependable, he scores a lot of rushing touchdowns. He'll get you passing touchdowns, and he's a good average of like 22 points. He's not going to hit the 35 points, the 40 points of some of the more like Lamar Jacksons, but you also don't get the down weeks where like he throws 3 or 4 picks and he doesn't score a rushing touchdown, so you only get 9 or 10 points, right? Like, I feel like Josh Allen, more times than not, will still get you a good decent amount of points. And he had more of a turnover prone kind of season last year, and he was still, I think, top 5 for fantasy QBs. Something like that.
Sounds good.
Yep. Anyone else? Cooper Kupp. I think we touched on him a little bit. You think he's going to be wide receiver 1 again?
I would have. If I could pick Cooper Kupp up, I will. Like he will be one of my 2 picks if he's available, and I'll throw him in. He might not be my 1, but he probably is 2, if not my 3rd, depending on what my running back situation looks like. So, it's going to depend. I think he's still going to be a valuable player in this fantasy league. I think he's going to have a good year this year.
Yeah, I think if you're in a redraft league, if you get Nakua in the first round, I would definitely target Kupp in like the 6th round, depending if you can get your running backs.
I think he's going to be gone before the 6th round. I think Kupp will be gone before the 6th round.
If he falls to the 6th round, you take him.
But I think there's no way he's gonna make it he's gonna make it all the way down to the 6th round. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of the East Coast Rams podcast. I think we've talked a lot. We've got this live stream, I think, pretty down. We got comments, we got likes. That's awesome. So I think this was a successful trial run. Ashton, thank you again for putting this part all together. I think it's going to go well for our future. But please make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're getting so close to getting to our next goal of 500 subscribers. So please take time to like and subscribe. Looks like we got another, comment down below. So it's just awesome that people are really trying to, come together as a Ramley to just to talk Rams. We're fans. We're not insiders who know everything, but we just like to talk Rams, give our opinion, and hope you guys want to start joining us in these live sessions so that you also can get your opinions heard as well. So really looking forward to keep doing this in the future. So find us youtube.com/@eastcoastrams. You can find us on X @eastcoastrams. You can find us on Instagram and Threads @eastcoastramspod. Ashton, anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
No. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. It was definitely a lot of fun. We're going to try to do more of this during the season when time permits. Appreciate doing all this content for you guys. We started this because we like to talk Rams. We would annoy our wives and drive them crazy and stuff like that. And this was a really good outlet for us to do that, especially after a loss. I mean, I need to so I don't break my TV. I need to vent about it, especially when we do silly, stupid stuff. So it's been a lot of fun, and I hope you guys continue tuning in.
Yes. All right. So next week we face the Lions. We're still looking to try and maybe do a preview episode. If we could find some Lions fans, that would be really great so that we can kind of bounce some things off of each other. But Lions, Rams next week in Detroit, Sunday Night Football. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be electric. It's going to be loud. We need to cheer our Rams on, whether you're there or at home. Let's give them the good vibes.
And we are streaming that Tuesday. Or we should be streaming that Tuesday. Going
after the game.
After the game, we'll be going over the game, talking about it. We'll have a guest. So hopefully you guys can tune in there. And I am driving that day. I'm sorry, Zach. I couldn't help it. I'm driving, and my record, guys, if you don't know, it's not great. We have one win. We have one win when I'm driving, and that was the Jaguars. So
hopefully you'll be done driving by the time that game's over.
Nope.
Oh, geez. Okay, well, with that, we're going to wrap it up. We will see you guys next time.